Shut up and sit down.
Hey everybody, Barry here again. Hey everybody, Barry here again. More engine building stuff. Last video, I took the pistons out, took them all apart, and soaked them, and then soaked them again. And now I have them pulled out. So this is what they look like. I just pulled them out and wiped them over with a rag or whatever. And man, they came out nice actually. This is one of the dirtier ones. Like, it looks good. I haven't really went over them completely yet, but I'm gonna go over them with like a toothbrush or something, clean them up really, really well, and then I'll start weighing them. And what I'll do is weigh the piston, write how many grams it is on the top of the piston, and then do the same with the ring packs, same with the wrist pins and clips, and I'll sort of situate all the pistons and clips and stuff so that I only have to remove a very little amount of material. Like, I'll put the heaviest wrist pin in with the lightest piston to try to find a really good average where I'm only gonna remove a little bit, like a couple of grams, something like that. So I'm gonna start cleaning all these up. I had to take out a couple of pistons because like this here is really bad. It's corroded really bad. And the rings are all stuck in there. They're kind of rough looking, so I'm not gonna deal with those. This one here is the worst actually. So I'm not even going to deal with those. I'll save those for a backup or something, and I won't mess with them. But these are all really good. Like, I can scrape some of this stuff out of the ring lands there, clean up the edges, and I'm super impressed with how this came out. All the pistons are all cleaned up. Rods are ready to go. Wrist pins, the rings, the clips are down here all ready to go. I only got cleaning the pistons because I'm dumb and didn't hit the button correctly and it didn't start recording. But it's all here. It's all there. I didn't bother to go any further with these pistons, of course. You can see that they're destructified. All this oil rings and stuff looks fine. I'll pick out the best set. I want to start weighing stuff. So I'm going to use this one for now. This one goes to just a gram, no digits. I'll weigh everything to within 1 gram. I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm not going to be revving this to like bajillion RPM. That NV3500 is not going to hold a lot of RPM for shifting, but when I get into 4th gear and start spinning, it could go high. So, you know, I'll put it to within 1 gram or, you know, as close as I can get. But I tested one rod the other day, a couple of rods, and 2 rods were 20 grams apart, which is substantial. So if I can get that down to 1 gram, it's gonna be a big difference. So let's do some tests. I'll do pistons first just because that's a lot easier and I don't have to set the jig up and stuff. And I'm just gonna weigh it. So like this, 474 grams, and I'll write it on top. Go to the next one, next one, next one, next one. Then I'll weigh the pins and see what they weigh. And like I said, heaviest with the lightest and get an average. Well, I guess I'll start with this first one. I'm right, 474. 477. 473. So far we're only about 4 grams from the heaviest to the lightest. Let's check this one again just to be sure. 471, so we're 6 grams. It's always a good idea to balance stuff when you're building an engine and taking time with it. Hopefully you can see down here the actual scale. I set it up so you should be able to. A lot of people go to a half a gram or a tenth of a gram when doing real high revving stuff, but this is not going to be that serious. I'm just doing it for the experience. Now I am also, obviously I'm only looking for 8 pistons. So hopefully I'll get 8 that are really evenly matched. And I might not have to touch the pistons or the wrist pins, and I can just balance the big and small end of the rod. Oh, line them all up. What have we got? We'll start with our 471 over here. There's our 471. 1, 2, another 2, 3 threes. 4 threes, actually. 2 4s, a 5, and a 7. So 473 seems to be our middle point. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If we had 2 2s and 2 4s, then every piston here is within 2 grams. And that would be perfect. So now I'll measure the pins and see what they're like. I'll write on the surface of the pins just as I've been doing with the pistons. So 149, we can see clearly marked. 149. 149. I'd like to get a couple that are heavier or lighter so that I can make up the difference in weight for these. Like this one here is 140. Well, it's 149. I was hoping it was going to be 148. That one's actually 148. So we have a 148. One is a little bit lighter, so that could potentially go with the heavier piston. So if we had a 149 on the 73 pin or piston, that's one extra there. Oh, actually, sorry, if we went to the 72. So 472 plus an extra gram, 474 minus a gram should get us to the same weight, hopefully. We'll see. Test this one again. It seems to be 150. That's 151. So 150, okay. 150. So we'll say 149, 72. We'll talk about the math in a second. 49. I don't mind removing a gram from a piston. That's not a big deal. It's going to be a lot harder to remove weight from this. That's why I'd like to get the weight evened out with these pins and stuff would be great. It's nice to have a lot of extra parts, like all these extra pins and stuff, so that I can just pick and choose which ones I want. Assuming that they're going to work out for me. Man, these are made really evenly. Just make sure again. So 150. Is 150, it's 474, it's 150, so I'll leave that one right here for a second. I'm trying to get an average, and I'm hoping that this is going to work out. That one's actually 151. There's a little bit of sludgy stuff left inside of here. I'm going to throw it out one side. And this one here does too, so I'll leave that one. So if 473 is our target weight, or our middle piston, plus 148, 621. So we minus 1 here and plus 1 there. So this should also be 621. And 474 plus 150. Okay, I kind of had it backwards. I was doing some math in my head, but heaviest pin, lightest pin, heaviest piston, lightest piston, and everything here is within, say, 2 ounces, and this one is heavier by an ounce, and this right weight, so right here is 149, so I'll say grams, not ounces, sorry, 149, 150, and the heavier piston has 148, so that pretty much makes them all even. Now I need one more pin. They're all 149, a couple were 150, only one was 148, so I need to make one. This one here is 148.8, so I got to take 0.8 of a gram off, and I'm going to do that with this thing. I'm already rotten, of course, but yeah, I'm going to use this burr bit and grind off as much as I can. I'm just going to chamfer the pin here. It's not going to hurt anything for strength. It's just going to work really well. And if I can get it to like 148.5, I'll be fine with that. I'll be within a half a gram for everything. And then I can do the rods. So that's not serious. We'll see if we can see. Here is the chamfer. It didn't make it any thinner or anything like that, just removed some material a little bit further in. So, final test. $148.3. Absolutely fine with that. This red scale does only by grams, so it'll sort of round up or it'll round down depending on how close it is. So absolutely fine. Pistons are balanced, pins are balanced. This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. So now I have my 148. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mint. Well, so far this is doing really, really well. It's almost all balanced. Pins, pistons, little clippy things. I weighed them, they're all the same. Doesn't matter. I'm going to do the big end and the small end now. I don't have a belt sander in order to do this correctly, but I do have an angle grinder, a bench vise, and one of those little sandpaper flappy wheel things. Watch your fingers. I'm going to go weigh them all up, and I guess it doesn't matter which piston goes with which rod because this stuff is balanced, that stuff is not. Let's see what kind of danger I can get in here. Well, this might be a really odd looking setup, but it doesn't have to be pretty, it's just got to work. Assuming it'll actually work. So that's on. And it doesn't have to be calibrated perfectly or perfectly accurate. I just got to be able to duplicate the same results or the same conditions every time. So if I set it up like this, say, make sure this is level. Put that over here. I just got this steel here so I can magnet it down so it won't be flopping all over the place. But I'll set the height so that each rod is level. I'm not going to be hitting anything. This is not as perfect as it could be, I can tell you that. But, hey, it's going to work. So the small end on this one, I'm just going to lay it out, make sure it's level and in the center. So we've got 194. I'll write that on there, and I'll check every rod now at the exact same height. 205. Paint marker, no paint. I'll check this rod again just to see if we can duplicate it. Huh, 06. So we're at 198. This old marker's not working at all. So 198. Try that again. Two. 196. 196 there. This is absolutely not perfect. Just trying to get it as close as I can. Funny how different positions on this pin gives it different weights. So I gotta be really, really careful with that. So right on that crease, dimple facing me is 196. I gotta check all of these again. I think this is gonna be a lot tougher than I expected. That one is 196. They're all like, when I get them all in the same position, they all seem to be pretty much the same weight. Not doing this before. It's going to take a lot of trial and error to get this thing right. The correct jig holds all the weight right here in the center, kind of like this. It's almost like a bearing put in there, which would be ideal. Oops. 196, so that's correct. And holds the small end of the rod also from the center. But if I can duplicate the exact same results every time by doing it this way, then I'm fine with it too. Just got to get everything exactly the same is the hard part, I guess I'll say. Checking numbers twice every time. They're only around an ounce or so off. 196, 197, that kind of thing. Okay, now that the small ends are all away, time to do the big ends. This is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to have to lift it up so that the big end, it's going to be kind of hard to do actually. It's completely level. but it's pretty much going to hold the weight of the rod. Let's try it right there. Okay, 414. Or 12. If I look completely lost and confused, it's because I am. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying. 414. This is definitely not how you build an engine. Good. I thought they were going to be way off. Like I did some measuring the other day really quickly, and I thought they were like 20 grams off, which seemed like a lot. They're only off like 1 or 2 here, actually. They're pretty much all the same. Like 414, 415. Well, So I know I'm balancing these things, but I don't really need to balance anything. It's all like within a. I hear Cass. Let's go see Cass. It's all like within 1 gram or 2 grams. What am I balancing this for? I'm just organizing parts so that the lighter parts fit the heavier parts and it all zeroes out. And I'm fine with that. Gee, oh, you're frightened the piss of me.
Hey.
Cass frightened the life out of me.
Hi, babe. You look really pretty today.
Well, Cass just absolutely frightened the life out of me. Got my heart pumping, so time to get this done. Alrighty, these are all pretty much exactly the same on the big ends. The small ends were off a little bit. My chair makes so much noise. 195, 196, 200, 198. So they're all pretty well in the same range. I think I'm going to try to match them all up with these. Maybe I'll shift my pins around a little bit because the big end and the piston is all on, the small end and the piston are all on the same end. So if I can manipulate the order of all this and get it all really, really close, that'd be sick. That's going to take me a little bit of time. So after I get it figured out, then we'll talk about it and I'll show you how I did it rather than you watch me going with a calculator or scratching my head. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on time lapse for a second so I can get this all straightened out. And I'm going to watch a couple of videos in the background on how to tune with a really, really big cam.
Let's get these balanced up.
That was the most head scratching I've done in a long time.
But they all should equal 820 ounces on the big end / piston. This down here is all pretty much perfect, actually. So I had to move around some pistons, put some heavier pistons with some lighter pins, lighter rod.
Oh man. Oh man. That took a lot of work, but done. And I learned a little bit about tuning idle with a massive cam too.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and put all these together.
I looked up orientation of the rods on these Gen 4 LS stuff. Apparently it doesn't really matter.
But I'd like to check out something and just show you that there's a big thick machine surface here, which is like this big flat surface, this big surface here, that big knobby thing over here. And then you've got one that's much smaller right here. So if we have two rods that are rubbing the big end, the big surfaces here together, then that's a spot for friction, in my mind anyway. So I thought I'd put this out toward the end of the crank and just have the two very small ends touching together and swinging like this and causing friction, so it'll be less friction. So I think I'm going to put it dimple to dimple like this in the engine. Now of course the dots go forward, and
in this orientation right here, it doesn't matter what piston goes in what cylinder or anything. The rings themselves are going to dictate what piston goes in what cylinder. So I'll set them all up so that I can number them 1 through 8. I'll set them all up here now, and that way when I get them all put together and the rods oriented the way I want them to, I can just number them, and I'll do the rings after I get the block cleaned up and honed out, and I'll set the ring gaps. I'm going to set them to 30 thousandths just because I'm a nutcase and I like to overdo things, because boost and ring lands. So that's all there's left to this part, is just put it together. So excited.
So excited.
This is definitely the cleanest that I've ever done with an engine build like this. I've always just stabbed it together as quickly as I could. Didn't make any sense to clean anything up, just a waste of time. Well, I do enjoy this. So we're going to be, what, dimple to dimple? Yes. All right, dimple to dimple. I gotta remember that. There's always going to be that one that I mess up. But trial and error. That's what it's for. All right, so the dimple is facing me. And we have pin. And some purple mystery fluid. I have no idea what this is, but whatever. Just gonna roll that around in there for a second. The clips go there. The clips were all the same weight, 1.8 grams per tube, so they're fine. Now this one is pointing back, so this one is going to be number 1. I think. These nice pretty pistons, and I'm here pouring oil on them. That's part of it. Don't nip your fingers in them. All right, so pointing back, left side. Man, I love floaters. Floating piston pins are the absolute best. No blowtorch necessary. I am probably going to have it fling out and hit me in the eyeballs all the same. How? Well, seems to work well. The piston isn't tight on it at all. That's always a good sign. I've had them before that I've pretty much had to twist the piston over, and I was like, whatever. It'll clearance itself. Not really a good thing, but learn as you go, I guess. Hey, went in. Sweet. So the first one, we can get a look. Just with the weight of the piston itself, no issues at all. I don't like when they're really, really tight. The clips are seated with the gap at the bottom so that there's no gap at all on here. Some people like to situate it so the gap is on one of these ends here, but I find it really hard to get them out later. There's always a later. So this is, where are you, Sharpie? Just imagine if I was prepared. Number 1. Mint. Now number 2 is going to be also dimple back toward me, the head. Just going to go over here. I'll put that in our secret sauce. And the dot will be ahead again. I'm kind of going to talk out loud as I'm doing this to make sure that I have it all done properly. And there's a very good chance that I'm probably going to do something wrong here and have to take another one apart, but you know me, I never hide any of my mistakes. These are going together pretty well. Nothing's flown off yet anyway. But the nicest part about having a bunch of parts left over is if a circlip flies away, that's fine. We've got like 20 more. I like it. My stomach is growling, and Cass is making nachos tonight. So I'm pretty excited about that. 2. So 1 and 2. I said it. I said I was going to mix one up. I'm going to turn this one around because 1 and 2 touch together. I was thinking 1 and 3 do for whatever reason. So this one has to go dimple forward. Now, the reason I wanted to put those pins ahead makes sense now. Ow. But it's not too serious. Just gonna pull the piston off and turn it around. If anybody's watching right now saying, "Oh, this guy's the worst engine builder ever," joke's on you. I'm not an engine builder at all. But maybe somebody will learn from my mistakes. So that's number 1 and number 2 done. And now we have small side and small side touch together, pistons face ahead. Sick. Now for number 3, the dimple has to face back at me again. And number 4 will go on it. Number 1 is ahead. That's good. Secret sauce. Piston faces ahead. Aha. I do have an idea of what I'm doing because I've built enough of these, or put together enough of these, that I can look in a bucket of bolts and tell you what's an LS bolt and what's not. So that's got to be worth something. But I've only ever used plastic gauge on 1.53, and it was used bearings, so I probably lose a point or two for that. Also, I wouldn't really consider this a clean room for building engines. Okay, now this one has to go away from me with the dot forward. Learning. Now, like I said, people say that there's no actual necessary orientation for the rods. I'm just going at what I think could potentially help. I'm sure it doesn't make any difference in the world that I'm putting the smaller machine surface together. But hey, if you can reduce friction, I'm all for that. Haha, man, these are deadly. These are deadly. They just fall right in.
I've only ever built an engine with new gaskets, never new parts, like new bearings or anything like that. No new pistons, rods, crank, any of that. I always wanted to buy a stroker crank for the 350s and that I had, but then I realized that a 4.8 makes more power than a 350 with a stroker crank anyway. I'm sorry to have to say that to the 350 guys, but that's just my experience anyway. Okay, Dot next to me for number 5. I gotta say, these Gen 4 rods are pretty beefy compared to the Gen 3 stuff that I'm used to looking at. That's always cool. Now this one, number 5 dot goes ahead. This one's a little more contrary than the other one was. Couple small taps, goes right in. Before I put all this in, I'm going to give it a really good cleaning again. And by cleaning, I mean I'm going to spray it all with brake cleaner. Contrary one. Also, 3/8 extension fits perfectly inside the pin. Doesn't even take much of a tap. It's just more than my hands can push. And still rocks perfectly. Number 5, now number 6, the dimple has to face away from me because we're going dimple to dimple. And the dot still goes forward. That one just needed a little introduction. Oh jeez, fell right in. This engine build's really starting to excite me. I was missing, or not missing, but I needed a set of heads because the 862 heads that I had on the creeper van, when the engine fell off the chain, of course, on the forklift. It broke one head and I didn't realize it. But it, that sucked. Oh, mystery sauce in the eyeballs. It actually broke the corner where the valve seal, where the valve cover gasket meets the head. So it's no good. And that was no fun at all. Number 7.HP. That sucked because that's the only set that I had. Or so I thought. I was looking for my Trailblazer SS intake today, and man, I went everywhere. I've got a carport garage on my house. I went completely through that. 2 small sheds out back that I put parts and stuff in, went completely through both of those, which are buried with parts and tires, and went through the pile of vehicles I have here out back, which there's 3 vehicles completely full of old parts. Forgetting that we had there's a storage container here that Craig uses. So I went in there, and after like 3 hours, I found the Trailblazer SS intake. And in that same container was 2 862 heads that I forgot I had. One of them is missing 3 valves, which I probably no doubt used for other experiments or something like that. But that's not a big deal because I've got the damaged head that has valves in it. And the springs don't matter because I'm going to be using the springs that Jorge sent me, which are Pac 12 18s. So I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing next, but I think after I have this done, which is going to be shortly, I'm going to get at the block so I can hone the block and get the rings done. I'm going to be reusing the bearings, of course, the crank bearings and the rod bearings, because they look phenomenal. This one has to have the dot go forward. I'm going to be using the crank and rod bearings, so I can, after this is done, I can pretty much start putting the block together. The only thing I'm missing is a cam. That's it. I still got to get the gaskets, but I made sure they're all in stock. I'm going to be using new head gaskets, new head bolts, new valve cover, new intake gaskets, new valley cover gaskets. Those are going to be the 4/8 one that have the non-DOD stuff. And the sensors, I've got boxes full of sensors here from Scrapping Engines. And they're all genuine GM sensors too, not just China stuff. I don't really feel comfortable using all China stuff. And this engine will have knock sensors in it, which is never a bad idea for me to have knock sensors. Everything is slippery now. I still need to come up with a turbo, which is either like a China boy, or like another dump truck turbo. So if anybody around Newfoundland or anywhere has like a 66 or 70 millimeter or bigger dump truck turbo or tractor trailer, I don't care what it is, bigger the better, let me know. If prices are within reach, then I'll buy it. Okay, that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Sick! We have rotating assembly.
The rest of the pistons that I have left over are 4/8 flat top pistons. And I have a bunch of 6-liter rods, which are the exact same as 5/3 rods. So I'm gonna put those together just off video, just because the next time I build a 5/3, I'll already have flat top pistons and rods, Gen 4 stuff, already assembled for it. So with 862 heads or 706 heads, that'll bump the compression up to like 10.7 to 1, which that and a nice healthy cam will be quite the combination. And I already know from experience because I had one and it was wicked. I had an LS1 cam, which is still small. And I could start off burnouts in 4th gear with 411 gears. It was standard, so that was pretty sweet. That looks so good. If I wasn't mistaken, I'd almost say that looked new. But man, am I happy with that. Just make sure everything is correctly oriented. We got dot, no dot, dot, no dot, dot, no dot, dot, no dot. Woo! That's perfect. Well, I'm gonna get ready and clean this place up and then go home and watch Spider-Man with Cass and the girls and eat some nachos. It's gonna be a good night. So I'm obviously all done here because, hey, another piece of the puzzle. And really quick, here are the heads. I have one in soak. We'll see that in the next video, see how it turns out. This old green everything cleaner has turned into black mud, so I might have to buy a new bucket of that. And here's the intake manifold. And I have to make up a throttle bracket for that. Make the fuel rails fit the regular Gen 3 truck injectors. There's a lot more to come. So this is gonna be one full series, start to finish, every mistake, every failure, every success. You're gonna see it all. That is assuming that you can sit and watch me for an hour, scratch my head, and just generally mess stuff up every video. So thanks again. Thanks to all the new subscribers. Almost at 3,800 now. That's insane. How is there that many people who wants to watch me do stuff like this? I have no idea. And thanks to my patrons. If you want to check out my Patreon, it is patreon.com/stationroadratrods. And thanks for watching. Have a great day, everybody.